Judge Frank Caprio spent decades on the bench, and in that time he built a reputation unlike any other. People watched him from around the world because his courtrooms never seemed like mere halls of law. They were places where humanity was visible, where compassion often mattered as much as the statute. For him, justice was never only about punishment. It was about understanding, about looking at the person and not just the charge. He had said many times in interviews that justice without mercy was incomplete. His very last case would embody that belief in a way that no one present could forget. The docket that day held a case that seemed routine. The clerk read it aloud. Samuel Patrick O'Connor, shoplifting, 1 carton of milk. On paper, the matter looked trivial. It was the sort of case that could have passed in minutes. Yet when Samuel stood before Judge Caprio, the ordinary became extraordinary. The judge began as he always did. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor, Samuel replied. His tone was calm, resigned. I had nothing to eat for 2 days. I was hungry. I took it. There was no attempt to craft a defense, no excuses beyond the simple truth. Caprio looked at him for a long moment, then set his pen down. Those who knew him understood what that motion meant. When the pen was put aside, the law on paper gave way to something deeper. The judge was about to look past the statute and into the life of the person standing before him. How old are you? He asked. 79, Samuel said. Caprio nodded slowly. Did you serve in the military? Yes, sir. Vietnam. Infantry. Purple Heart. The courtroom grew still. The words carried their own weight. Here was a man who had once fought for his country, who had been wounded in service, who now stood accused of stealing milk because he was hungry. As the judge listened, he noticed Samuel's firm grip on a battered suitcase. It never left his hand, not when he spoke, not when he shifted. Finally, Caprio asked, What do you have in that suitcase? Samuel hesitated. His voice lowered. It's all I have left. People might think I'm mad if I open it. These are my treasures. Caprio's voice softened. In all my years, I've never thought a man mad for caring too much. Please, show me. Samuel opened the clasps and lifted the lid. What lay inside was not clothing or tools of survival. It was a collection of memory. Photographs, letters, medals, dog tags, notebooks, preserved and arranged with devotion. These are my brothers, Samuel said. The ones who never came home. I've carried them for 50 years. He reached inside and lifted a photograph. This is Daniel Ortiz. He was 18. He wanted to start a band when he returned. He never had the chance. He placed it down carefully, then picked another. This is Corporal James Hall. He wrote to his wife every day. He died carrying 2 wounded men to safety. His last letter she never opened until I brought it to her. Another photo, and his voice cracked. Captain William Harris. He saved me. He threw himself on a grenade. His last words were, "Tell my kids I love them." Each memory was recited as though it had just happened. Samuel spoke with precision. The names, the details, the final moments, all etched into him. The judge asked, almost in a whisper, "How many?" 286, Samuel said. Every one I could remember, every one I could preserve. I couldn't let them be forgotten. I wrote their stories in this book. From the suitcase, he pulled a notebook, thick and worn from decades of handling. Their birthdays, where they came from, what they dreamed of, how they died. Whenever I found a family, I gave them something, a photograph, a medal, a letter. I've found over 100 families. I told them their son was remembered. He placed the book before the judge. Caprio opened it and turned the pages. Handwriting filled every line. Whole lives condensed into words. Fragments of conversation. Moments of humor, acts of courage, final breaths. The judge closed it gently. "You are not guilty," he said. His voice was heavy. "You are a guardian. You carried their memory for half a century when no one asked you to, when no one helped you. You honored them more than this nation ever did. Your case is dismissed. Tears formed in his eyes. You lived for others, even when you had nothing, for yourself. For that, this court owes you gratitude. Samuel closed the suitcase and held it firmly again. There was no look of victory, only the quiet certainty of a man who had kept his promise. The case ended there, but the story did not. Later, as word spread, people began to ask what exactly was in that notebook. Samuel had not shared all the entries in court, but within its pages were lives preserved with devotion. He had written about Private Ortiz. He carried his guitar onto the transport. He sang until his voice broke. He said he would teach me chords when we got home. He never left the field alive. He had written about Corporal Hall. He folded every letter neatly. Each began the same. My dearest Anna. His words carried hope. On the day he fell, he carried more than his rifle. He carried us, and we lived because of it. He had written about Captain Harris. He grabbed my shoulder, forced me down. He saw the grenade before I did. His body covered it. His last thought was of his children. I promised to tell them. I did. The notebook also contained dozens of others. One entry described Sergeant Michael Davis. He joked every night. He said laughter kept fear away. He never stopped smiling, not even on patrol. He died shielding 2 men behind him. His laughter is gone, but his courage remains. Another entry described Specialist Alan Peters. He kept a photograph of his mother in his pocket. He said she made the best bread in their town. He promised he would take me there one day. A sniper's bullet ended him before he could keep that promise. Another, Private Thomas Green. He was 19. He wrote poetry in secret. He showed me one once, about rivers. His notebook was soaked in blood. I carried it until I found his family. I gave it to them. His mother wept, holding his words. Page after page carried these memories. Each was a testimony that might have been lost, had Samuel not carried them. He had lived decades without a home, yet he carried their homes inside his suitcase. 2 weeks after that case, Judge Frank Caprio passed away. His family reflected on his career and said that Samuel's case was the truest reflection of his beliefs. To him, the law was never just about punishment. It was about seeing the human being, about giving dignity even to those who had none left. At the funeral, Samuel was invited to sit at the front. He placed his suitcase by his side as always. When the service ended, he opened it, took a photograph of the judge, and placed it with the others. You belong with them now, he said softly. You saved me. You will be remembered too. The notebook grew by one more name. Judge Caprio's photograph was added to the collection of those Samuel had guarded. Now, among soldiers who had fallen in foreign fields, there was also the image of a judge who had seen humanity in a courtroom. Samuel continued to walk with the suitcase. He carried it through shelters, through streets, through years. Inside were the names and stories of 286 soldiers and now one judge. The weight never lessened, but he bore it because forgetting, to him, was the greatest crime. He still opened the notebook at times and read aloud the entries, even when no one listened. He still traced the handwriting with his finger as though each word was sacred. He still remembered their laughter, their voices, their promises. And now, when he reached the last pages, he read the words he had written about Caprio. He listened when no one else would. He called me a guardian. He showed mercy when he had nothing to gain. He is remembered among the brothers. The case of a stolen carton of milk had ended not in punishment but in revelation. It revealed a man who had built his life on memory, and it revealed a judge who had built his career on compassion. Together, in that courtroom, they created a moment that defined what justice could mean when it was joined with humanity.